Star Destroyers are a broad category that includes vessels like the Onager-class, which are more carrier-focused, Imperial-class, which are massive vessels with a battleship design emphasis, or even massive shadow generator platforms like the Interdictor-class. So it's no surprise that there would be a superweapon or siege-breaking class of Star Destroyer. That's right, today's discussion is on the unusual-looking Onager-class Star Destroyer. The ever-faithful Rathana Heavy Engineering developed this powerful Star Destroyer with one purpose: to obliterate targets with maximum firepower. But unlike traditional means of firepower, instead the Onager was created to be armed with either two super heavy composite beam turbo lasers or two orbital bombardment particle cannons. It really depends on the mission parameters. However, before we talk about those insane weapons, let's break it down in its entirety. Rathana was licensed by Kuat Drive Yards to develop a Star Destroyer with the ability to destroy Separatist holdouts during the era of the Clone Wars. Engineers at Rathana began designing this cruiser-class Star Destroyer superweapon hybrid. It came in at 1,288 meters in length and was propelled by 5 powerful sublight engines. The Onager came with a primary and secondary hyperdrive system, with a class rating of 1.75 for the primary and class 6 for the secondary. Shields consisted of 2 deflector shield generator domes, which is pretty standard for Star Destroyers of this size. What isn't standard is the additional frontal deflector shields, but we can probably guess as to why those were equipped. A complement of 36 TIE Line starfighters and 6 Lambda-class shuttles filled the hangar bays, while the vessel was crewed by 25,200 officers, pilots, and enlisted, with the ability to carry 240 troopers, be that Navy or Stormtrooper. Most likely they were there in case of attempted boarding action. Now that we discussed the specs more or less, let's get into the meat of this Star Destroyer, its armament. Standard weaponry consisted of 6 twin heavy turbolaser batteries, 24 heavy turbolaser batteries, and 20-point defense laser cannons. That wouldn't be anything special, but considering the size of the cruiser, it could properly defend itself and engage effectively against most enemies it would encounter. Considering the secrecy of the vessel and its rarity, the Onager-class wouldn't be found flying solo. You could see a number of support vessels and large Star Destroyers on its flanks and vulnerable points of attack. But who really cares about these all-too-common weapons? We're here for the Onager's big guns. The first of the configurations, the super heavy composite beam turbo lasers. 2 of these massive turbo lasers could be fixed within the Onager. Powered by kyber crystals, these super weapons could attack enemy vessels from long range and reduce their hulls to slag, blasting them into oblivion. While these weapons were strong and the long-range targeting sensors worked to effectively snipe the enemy, the orbital bombardment particle cannon was considered to work from an even longer distance than the super heavy turbo lasers. This super weapon was both a particle cannon and a mass driver cannon, and like the super heavy turbo laser, powered by kyber crystals. It really is no surprise that the Empire would exploit the use of these kyber crystals after discovering their true capabilities. While you could arm the Onager with either of these weapon systems, you would probably want to consider the mission or deployment and whether or not you would want something with a shorter range that operated more as a special battery, or if you wanted a pair of long-range mass driver cannons. When in combat, you could use the super heavy composite beam turbo lasers to burn through a single vessel until nothing but a hunk of dead ship remained, or sweep across a battle group with a cutting beam, breaking shields and obliterating smaller warships as you sweep. But say you have the orbital bombardment particle cannon. When using those, you could fire in conjunction, one after the other, breaking through shields and hulls with pure firepower. These blasts were strong enough to render capital ships fractured and ultimately crippled. But with massive weapons like these, that make up the majority of the vessel, a great enough attack on them could cause a chain reaction that results in the complete destruction or near to destruction of the Onager, which is one reason you could find an escort of Imperial-class or Victory-class Star Destroyers on its flanks. Squadrons of TIE fighters would also fly in defensive formations to counter smaller strike teams that may slip by the larger warships. The Onager is truly a devastating weapon to be unleashed upon an enemy. against a fleet that could punch holes through enemy cruisers from a range that leaves the helpless defenders wondering what's attacking them. Against an unruly planet, shield defenses and battlements would be crushed and shattered by a rain of concussive particle cannon fire, each one blasting against the surface with an incomprehensible level of firepower. If any surviving rebels escaped the onslaught, they'd be left wondering what had attacked them and how it could have rained such devastation. When Rathana Heavy Engineering created the Star Destroyer, they had in mind the Republic forces engaging CIS to liberate occupied systems. By the time the Onager-class was deployed, it found a different purpose. A purpose that only the coldest of tacticians could imagine: long-range annihilation. The Onager-class Star Destroyer is a fleet killer and a planet raiser. It does not matter whether you're within a Liberty-type star cruiser or hunkered down inside a mountainside. As soon as you fall into the sights of the Onager, you are one with the Force. I hope you enjoyed today's discussion on a rather unknown Star Destroyer. I tried some different writing formats, so let me know if you notice anything new, or if you prefer my other formats when breaking down and talking about starships. The Onager is one of the coolest looking vessels in my opinion, and it stands out not just by that factor, but with its insane superweapons. I can't think of anything scarier than a Star Destroyer that can attack you from well beyond your sensor range. Star Wars doesn't really have a lot of vessels that were designed to fight like this, and if these were made in mass numbers, the Rebel fleet wouldn't have made it very far. But that's just what I think. Let me know your thoughts. Feel free to subscribe to the channel. I welcome all to this little community. Like this video on your way out, and may the Force be with you.